Fairy Trails Farm. I've got all these projects going. I finally finished all of my full apron ties, so I got those on a pile ready to be ironed. I'm almost done with all the embroidery for the cat and the dog 1920s, 1940s recreation vintage bibs that I'm working on. All of these are videos. So I've got all of that going. I'm so excited. Tons of projects. I want to get started on my cozy corner, and I haven't talked about it for a couple months. Remember, I got the 1949 vintage TV phonograph radio combo, and that's sitting here. And to go with that little whole corner thing, if you remember, we moved the whole TV situation out of the corner and into my kid's room because he was finally old enough to do that. And so I have this love seat that I'm going to make a slip cover. I'm not recovering it because we want to use it. We're not going to have room for a full couch in our living room at the farm, but we will use just the love seat. So I'm just making a slip cover to go in my corner, and I have a divider screen that I'm also going to cover and put in the corner and just make this corner really a cheery little place for me to sit and sew and watch my old movies on my old TV. But anyways, to get started, the first part of the video is I'm going to be measuring. If you remember what I talked about, I've got all these wonderful vintage fabrics that I want to use. I have an old quilt, I have some really plush chenille, but for the ruffle I want to do a very full ruffle. It's going to be very kitschy, farmy, very feminine, roughly, and it's going to be red and white, which is totally out of my color wheelhouse. If you know, most of my house is maroons color scheme, and my kitchen of course is the pink and white. So this is going to be reds, and I just want red and yellow and the flower calicos. And I really want it to be a cheery kind of place in here in my sunny sewing room. So the first thing I'm going to do is it's going to be a lot of me working and not talking, because I'm going to pull this couch out and I'm going to measure around it. And how we make a ruffle. How do you make a ruffle? The first thing you got to do is you got to measure. You need to measure the length that I want the ruffle. So I'm probably going to be measuring right underneath where the sofa cushions hit, because I want this to be a long, full ruffle. Then I need to measure all the way around the love seat or sofa, whatever you want to call it, to find my width around my piece of furniture. Then I'm probably not going to double it exactly. I don't know. I'll have to see. Get a rough estimate of what the width is, and then figure out what you do is, if you want a very, very full ruffle, like if you're making curtains or ruffles on a bedspread, you usually double your width around your furniture. But I might just do a little bit, almost double, but not. Sometimes it looks like it's going to be way too full. Then I'll only do the width plus half the width. That way it's full, but it's not completely. I mean, I don't want this to be like a Southern Belle ball gown. I just want it to be a nice, full, sticky-outy ruffle. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I might not be doing a lot of talking because I'm going to be pulling it around and crawling around on the floor and measuring things. But this is the first part of this video, will be measuring it. And I don't know if the video gets too long, it might not be me sewing it, but I'm going to be measuring it, cutting it out, and possibly sewing it in part 1 of this video. I have no idea how many installments this is, because I'm going to break it up into each part of the construction of this slipcover, and then hopefully I'll have a final video. I'll put it all together in fast motion from start to finish, and we'll look at it being created. After we finish the slipcover, we'll move to privacy screen, and then hopefully this summer is when I'm planning on getting to the TV, because I might need to haul it outside because it's all gross in there. Let's get started on measuring for our ruffle. Okay, I've added an inch to each front and the side, and you don't have to measure them once because I'm going to multiply, and I have to use a calculator. I am not a math person. I'm a writer, not a mathematician. So I'm going to do 63 times 2. It's going to be 126 inches. Then I'm going to do 37 times 2. That's 74 inches. Then I'm going to add 74 to 126, and I got 200 inches. So I have 200 inches around. It's going to give me approximately 6 yards of fabric thing. All right, now I need to figure out, I'm writing all this down because I am senile and I'm forgetting everything. I want to figure out where I want my ruffle to start, and that is directly beneath the cushion. So I want my ruffle to be 14 inches long, which means I want to add an inch for the gather at the top, and I want to add ½ inch for the hem. So that's going to give me 15.5 inches wide, or the length of the ruffle. First of all, let me say, crawling around on this hard tile, ceramic tile floor really sucks. It's probably bad enough if you're young, but when you're 50 years old and you're crawling around on this floor, it's really bad. Okay, so I know I have like a ton of this. I really, really love this bright red, but I don't know how much I have. So let's find out here. Let's see how many yards I have. It's up here, that's easier. I think I should have enough. I don't know if I don't want to do it exactly double, and of course I've got all my cats. So since this is folded, I'm going to use both sides. I'm going to sew them together here. And we decided we needed it 15.5 inches long. Should be fine. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm just going to cut up the middle, and I'm going to put this into 2 halves. I'm going to sew it together. It should be fine. So if it's exactly, to double it would be 12 yards. This is going to give me 10 yards. So I think that's going to be fine as far as the fullness that I'm after. I think 12 yards would have been a lot anyway. The real crappy part will be gathering. I hate gathering on the machine. I would much rather gather by hand. Whenever I gather on the machine, the whole thing seems to get screwed up. Stitches break, whatever. I've never had luck gathering on the machine, even when I had a gathering foot. I don't know why people think it's easier. So that means I'm going to have to hand gather 10-yard long ruffle. That's okay though. So here's the deal. So I'm going to finish my embroidery of the bibs, and I also have another loom knitting, but that loom knitting is very time sensitive because it's for St. Patrick's Day. So I think tonight I might finish my loom knitting project so I can get that video out of the way. Then I can finish my embroidery because it's almost done. I think I've got 2 cats left. And then I can start hand gathering. So let's see if we can't get this cut, get this sewn together, maybe get it hemmed on both ends and ready to go so I can just sit and gather it. So something is progress. I've been wanting to get to this project for some time, but all my other little projects have been taking up time. So then I thought, well, let's just do it in stages and let's break up the videos into parts, because it would really be a really long video anyway if I wasn't doing it in parts. I have trimmed my 2 halves. I'm just going to do a seam to join the 2, and we will, I'm not sure if I'm using the bottom selvage, I don't even know if I need to do a hem. It might just be talking about hemming the top and getting it ready to be gathered, because I know this wasn't an exactly straight. Okay, I'm just going to do a straight stitch down this to join these 2 halves. going to zigzag. You know how I love to zigzag for strength here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold over this edge. We know it. So we want 15.5 inches. So let's say 16. So it's about 2 inches over. So I'm going to cut. I'm going to trim 2 inches off of everything, and then I'm going to go hem the whole thing. We don't want to cut that edge because that's the edge, the selvage edge. So we want to cut this edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and we are going to fold this top edge in twice. So about a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to just do a hem. So that way I'm just going to have a nice finished edge for me to hand ruffle. Verifying I'm not sewing my good edge, that my selvage edge. So I think I'm going to do it so I can get it as straight as I want instead of doing it all at once. I could go, fold it over twice, do it once, but I think I'm going to do it separate. But I'm going to just zigzag it, and then I'm going to just zigzag it again. Okay, I finished the top. Now this is a little bit more time consuming doing it this way, but I wanted to make sure I keep it straight, and I don't want to use a bunch of pins and stuff, so this just makes it a lot easier doing it this way. Okay, I'm just going to do straight stitch now. So I have my top done. The ruffle came in at roughly 16 inches. And remember, we want it to be 16 to 16.5 is what it came in, so it's a little crooked. But we want it to be 15.5 when it's finished, so that gives me room to hand gather it all and then sew it to the part of the slipcover when we get to that part. So that's what we've done today. All right, so I finished the gathering, and it's a great big ruffle. So I've left just the needle tucked in there, so when I get ready to sew it there'll be a piece directly underneath where the cushion is, a flat piece where this is going to hook around. There'll be arm pieces, and we'll be doing all of that. I need to do a sketch so I can sort of show you what I'm thinking about. At that point, I will adjust the ruffle and make it tighter or looser or whatever I need to do. So I'm just going to tuck that needle in there, and we'll have it in there for that project. Real quick, since I didn't show you while I was doing the ruffle because it was pretty involved, it was like 200 feet long. I thought I'd show you with a scrap how to do a running ruffle stitch. So what you do is you usually measure, say if I'm making a skirt and I need a ruffle measuring 36 inches in diameter, then you're going to measure your thread about 38 inches. You want a few inches to play around with and to have control over your needle. I usually do my ruffling, hand ruffling, and running stitch with double thread. So in that case, I would need to multiply 38 and double it over. Once you get your needle, if you're making a ruffle, obviously you probably have an edge that you've already finished, so you don't have a raw edge. Sometimes you just have the raw edge. But you're going to put your needle in, and I got the biggest needle. It's like an embroidery needle and some dark thread here on this white. You would put your needle in, and I usually will secure my thread first. I'll just do a stitch, loop around, because the one thing that's really aggravating if you've done a whole big ruffle and then your knot comes out, that can be really frustrating. So you're just going to put it in, and what you're going to be doing is in, out, in, or this out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. So, and then you're going to ruffle here. When you pull your thread through, it's called a running stitch because it runs. The important thing is that you don't want any kind of back stitches or anything that's going to lock this in. You got to make sure your one stitch is in front of the other. Sort of like you're making like a fan or a gather. You just do it right there on your needle. So you have your running stitch. When it's time to make the ruffle, you would measure it, say, like I said, if you went 36-inch ruffle, your fabric, whatever you're gathering, is probably going to be 1/2 size bigger or 2 sizes bigger. So like if you want a 10-inch ruffle, you probably got 20-inch fabric. If you want a real full, or you could have if you wanted a 10-inch ruffle, you might have 15-inch fabric, depending on the fullness of the ruffle. And different time periods have different fullness of ruffles if you're sewing, you know, for dolls or whatever. So then when you pull it, I've made a ruffle, and then I could adjust my gathering. And then what you would do when you got to wherever, when you've measured it out and rearranged your ruffle and you know you got the right size, then you're just going to secure it. And now this is what I did not do on my big red ruffle, because I have not sewn it onto the piece, and I'm going to be machine sewing that together. So I've left it so I can adjust it. So now this is the ruffle is all done. Just a quick way to do a running stitch and do a hand ruffle, hand gather. This has been the first part of making the ruffle for the Cozy Corner slipcover, and this has been Angie. Bye.